Welcome to the Masterbooks podcast, where we bring you conversations that will strengthen your biblical worldview and the faith of your family. I'm Jennifer White, publicist at Masterbooks, a division of New Leaf Publishing Group. As host of this show, I'll be opening the doors to the Masterbooks family library of books, authors, and curriculum. For over 45 years, our company has been about one thing: ink on paper to touch eternity. In a world increasingly at war with God, we are publishing to partner with you to disciple your family, the church, and the nations. Well, hello and welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Masterbooks podcast. I have the pleasure of interviewing Craig Froman. Craig has been my friend for quite a while because I've been around Masterbooks for at least 10 to 12 years. And Craig and I worked together there in the office quite a long time ago when he was first releasing his first book. So we are going to visit today. Craig is also an editor at Masterbooks and New Leaf Publishing Groups. And I am thrilled to get to talk to you today, Craig.
It's good to talk to you too, Jennifer.
We've had a great little behind the scenes visit this morning before we hit record on the podcast. Craig has great gifts. He is quite the editor, but he's also quite the author. And today I want to just visit with you, Craig, about why you chose to write books specifically about geography. Why did you want to pour into the lives of elementary students about geography?
It's always been kind of a fascination of mine, just not only just what God kind of created around the world, the different biomes and things like that. So the land animals have always been a fascination of mine, and the animals God created and has put around the world are always fascinating to me. And obviously his people that are all around the world, the cultures, the language, those kind of things have always fascinated me. So I began way back before even coming to Masterbooks, writing at a university. In my lunch hour, I would go to the library there and just research and study and prepare for the first book that ended up being with us here at Masterbooks. Right. But it's just been something really that I've enjoyed, and that I hoped kids would enjoy as well, to kind of see God's world from so many kind of different angles.
Absolutely. And your family traveled quite a bit when you were growing up, right?
Yeah, at least through the U.S. for sure. Goodness, way back at the bicentennial. So we kind of mentioned this just briefly a little bit ago. So my mom and dad bought a camper, a truck and a camper, and got my brother and I loaded up. And for 6 weeks, one summer, we drove around the United States. I think it was 30 some states that we went through, 11,000 miles that we drove. And it just a wonderful experience. And it was during the bicentennial. So there was all kinds of, birthday celebrations for America going on and things like that. And it was during the July 4th. That was a part of the trip. I think we were in Florida at that point, but it was just a really wonderful trip. So I got to see so many things that I was only in 5th grade, so I probably didn't appreciate them as much as I would now. Mm-hmm. But looking back, I know that was just a real blessing, a real wonderful experience to have.
And it sounds like it birthed in you such a love for just travel and geography itself. And I love that you worked during your lunch break to study and prepare for your first book. That inspires me to just carve out little moments to work on it.
The students I was at a university and I had some work study students. They always thought that was kind of crazy too.
They did. But look at you now. Who's laughing now? Well, everybody knows that's listening more than likely that Masterbooks has been around for like 45 years, over 45 years. And our mission has always been ink on paper to touch eternity. So tell us about bringing your love for the Lord and your love for geography and people and bringing those together in curriculum that will help families teach a biblical worldview with geography.
Oh, sure, sure. That's something I think that God has really birthed in me from a long time ago. I grew up in a little church in Tracy, California, but even though it was a fairly small little church, it was connected to people all around the world, and so we had uh, visitors, guests from all around the world come and share their stories about what God was doing wherever they might have been from. Sometimes we'd have missionary conventions and we'd have missionaries come, and then we'd have different foods from around the world. So all of these kinds of experience let me see that not only am I connected because of God's salvation to my little community, but I'm connected to all these communities around the world, and his greatest commandment to love him, and the second is like it says, is to love others, basically love our neighbors. And so I realized that a part of that is coming to understand them, the different cultures, the different places people live, the different foods that they eat, because that's what God has put in that particular, let's say, country or area of the country where they live.
Mm-hmm.
It's that part has been really fascinating to me. And hopefully, as children go through these books and encounter people from around the world and places and different things like that, they'll come to realize that God loves all those people. He loves everyone from around the world. It's not just our little family. He loves everyone, and he wants us to be a part of that too, to reach out to them, to disciple them, to lift them up, to really make the world a place where his love can really abound. And that's something that I love being a part of, and love that Masterbooks is here, allowing us to create curriculum like this that can get into homes and really help families take their children around the world to see what God is doing all around the world.
Absolutely. And I love watching the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group and the Masterbooks app, where the families who are using your books post these fabulous pictures at Mount Rushmore, or, as they're traveling through wherever they're traveling through, and they have their kids holding up their books saying, "Oh, that we're here in the book, but we're here," I love it.
Seeing that. That is exciting. That is very exciting.
I failed at the beginning of this podcast to talk about the specific books that you have written. So why don't you just give us a little bit of overview about where you started, what book you started with, and what all you've written so far?
Oh, sure. Well, so the one that I was writing at the university during my life, during my lunch hour, was Passport to the World. So that's this one here.
Okay. And for those of you who are just listening, Craig is holding up the beautiful Passport to the World book.
And one of the things, it was wonderful when they gave us the go ahead. I had presented it to our team here, and they gave us the go ahead to kind of design a few templates for the pages and such. And it got an okay and started moving ahead, and it was almost done. We were getting it wrapped up, and I realized, it's called Passport to the World. And I said, it'd be really nice. You can describe them. But they let us go ahead and create a little passport book for the children to pull out and go through as they went through each country. And there's little stamps in the back from each of the countries they visit that they can put in their passport book. And that was just so exciting for me to see, because I wanted them to feel like they were actually able to visit kind of, these countries and learn a little something about the people, learn a little something about their language.
So it's almost like a field trip that the family gets to take, but they're at home, they're doing school, or maybe they're on the roads. A lot of people road school and are traveling in an RV for their whole life, or, for their homeschool experience. And so how neat to to teach them what that travel feels like with their own passport. And they love stickers, of course.
I do too. So
Me too.
that was kind of fun.
Stickers are making a comeback for adults too. So, Passport to the World is a part of which geography curriculum?
Okay, so that would be the geography and cultures. Now, I don't have the little one for that one, but
That's
that
okay.
one is also with the Children's Atlas of God's World. So
Mhm.
those three, the two books and the teacher guide, will kind of take them on a journey around the world. And that's kind of neat too, because in the teacher guide, then we actually added in some recipes from foods around the world that they could kind of sample as they went to the different countries and things.
Right.
So that's something that's fun too to see on Moms and Master Books or in the app when they post that they've made one of the recipes and had that for their dinner or something like that.
Yes.
That's always kind of exciting. So
I love the one that I see the most is when they make the naan bread.
yes, okay, and that one I think right is in our new one there because I know my wife. We homeschooled our kids way back when they're both um, well they're both in their 20s now,
Okay.
but I know that she helped with some of those as well in uh, the My Story K.
Okay.
I think we added the breads from around the world,
Mhm.
and she came up with the different recipes for the end of each quarter. And so she enjoyed doing that too.
So
So
everything you've written is geography focused. Tell us a little bit about My Story K or My Story, the series.
yeah. So that was a fun one I got to write with my son, and we homeschool our kids all the way from kindergarten through high school, and that it was kind of a beautiful experience. My wife and I were from California. We had never heard of homeschooling,
Mhm.
and we got out to Missouri first, and our pastor there, him and his wife homeschooled. A lot of the people in the church homeschooled. At first, we thought it was a little odd. You know, why would you do that when you can just send them to school like they did with us? But we realized just how really beautiful and powerful that is to have the parent raise and train their child in the way they should go. Um, so my son helped me write My Story 1 and 2, and then they opened the door for us to be able to write My Story K as well. And that is also it's geography based. It's also has to do with history and culture and with governments.
Mhm.
So it introduces those kind of concepts, but in a more kind of immersive way where you go through the various countries, you see what their government might be like, or their flags look like, or what the people might be like, or some of the languages will share different words each day in a different language that they can learn, or each week. I'm sorry, and so that also was just kind of a fun one for kindergarten, first and second graders. Just a real basic introduction. Maestro K's pretty simple, laid back. It's just a few days a week. My Story 1 and 2 are kind of carry them through the whole week, but it isn't a heavy curriculum. But again, it's more of an introduction to God's world, to the people of His world, to the different kinds of climates, the different kinds of animals, different things like that. But always kind of coming back to the foundation that God is the Creator. He's our Savior, and He is all around us, really, and all that He has created. You can be able to call on Him and know that He's there.
I love that. And I love that it is introducing the students to the fact that the world is bigger than them and their family, and that God's love is so broad, and his ability to not just create a person and the pet they may know and the people in their family, but other nations and how many people, it just makes them see how big God is.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
can imagine that it is an integral part to eventually, as they learn about the Great Commission, how their mind has already been broadened to see that there are people in other places that they can witness and be a light there in their household, but they can also pray for other nations and
Right.
visit other nations and see God move in those places.
I know with the My Story books, there's certain places where for sure we have them take a moment to pray for the country that they were just talking about. And I think that's really important, that they can know that God will hear their prayers and help kind of bring his word and his message of salvation to different people around the world. That's ultimately what I hope that what will come about through this, is that they'll know. I always think of Paul. Paul understood obviously his Jewish heritage, but he was called to reach to the Gentiles. So he was called to go beyond his kind of small community, and he began reaching other people. But he knew their cultures, these other cultures that were around them, and he could make connections to those people because he understood their culture and things like that. And he was able to make inroads because he knew who they were, what they believed, but then he was able to then kind of let them see Christ and to see that he was the way to salvation. So it's something that I find kind of always driving me to be kind of like that, like Paul was, to present that in the books so that kids can see people around the world, but realize they're called to connect with those people as they get older. They might have a friend with someone from around the world that they can share Christ with.
Right.
And
the world,
have to be uncomfortable or afraid.
We have such a global connectivity now because of the internet to other places in the world to connect and love and be on mission together. And
right. Yes,
so,
definitely.
yeah, one of the things I want to do is stop for a second and thank those of you who have been reviewing our podcast. And we are committed to giving you a shout out when you do that. So I want to thank Jen and Lovable Leo for reviewing the podcast on Apple. Thank you very much for your kind words about this being your best homeschool year yet, because you use masterbooks. And for those of you listening today, I want to thank you for listening. And if you have comments about Craig's curriculum, the different elementary geography curriculum that Masterbooks puts out, we would love for you to write those comments in the reviews and just say hello to Craig. And by the way, Craig has his own Facebook page, his author Facebook page. You can look him up, Craig Froman, and he is going to be doing a wonderful little reliving on his Facebook page of the journey he and his family took around the United States. So I think that's going to be so fun. He said he's going to have journal entries. What else are you going to be sharing?
So, right, we had a little daily journal that we took on that 6-week trip. So we'll post that. I'll post some of our original pictures. Obviously, they're from long ago at the bicentennial of the United States. But I'm also posting glimpses of passages from Children's Atlas of the U.S. and Passport to America. Those specific states that we went through, I'm highlighting kind of various portions from that. This is from Passport to America.
Okay.
So we went through Florida, and I know we went to St. Augustine. So it's got, like, did you know St. Augustine is known as the oldest permanent city in the U.S., settled long ago in 1565 by Europeans who had sailed the Atlantic Ocean. And so we kind of share things like that in these books. But the ones I'm going to be sharing there will pertain to kind of some of those special highlights and features of the states that we went through. There'll also be giveaways of Passport and Children's Atlas of the USA.
They are gorgeous books. So rich colors, beautiful photos.
Those were very exciting.
Yeah, our team did a great job. I love them. So since we are 1 week away from, at the time of this episode being broadcast will be 1 week away from the 4th of July. So tell us a little bit about your U.S. geography course. And I think it's something that families could even do this summer together while they're taking a break, if they're taking a break.
I think that would be really pretty fun.
Yeah.
There's the Children's Atlas of the USA and Passport to America. Those are the two books that are part of it. Then if you get the teacher guide, so it's elementary U.S. geography and social studies.
Okay.
I know, let me open this up here, like in Florida. So this is in Passport to America.
Okay.
In Florida, it has one of the special foods that they're known for is key lime pie. Well, then when you get into the elementary U.S. geography and social studies, we actually have a recipe for key lime pie for the area of Florida that we're talking about there.
Yum.
And then this also adds the information, the history of the different state quarters. So you'll learn something about that as well. But yeah, if you were traveling to various states or something like that, and you had those books, you could kind of look. I know some people have told me that they have done that as they've traveled. They look at what that particular state might have. We've got the maps in here that are marked with particular features. So I'm just opening it up to North Carolina.
You're watching, you can see. Yes.
There we go.
North
There
Carolina.
Okay. So there's the flags that are on here and the push pins, and they all connect to information that's down below. So you can learn a little something more about each of those particular.
And that's the Atlas for the United States?
Yes, that's
okay.
Right. So Children's Atlas of the USA has those features, and they all really kind of break down. One of the things, I want to find this real quick for us here, that I found fascinating, and that is also in the Children's Atlas, because we wanted to obviously bring about history and culture that reflected God's presence in our country. And I just found it fascinating that every state preamble to their constitution has something referring to God. And I just found that pretty fascinating.
Yes.
Here's
wonderful.
Yes, this is Kentucky's preamble. We, the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberties we enjoy, and invoking the continuance of these blessings, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So every single constitution of every state has something, either invoking Almighty God, God's direction, the sovereign ruler of the universe. It's just really a blessing to kind of read through and see that that Christian history, a part of the founding of each particular state, let alone the nation as a whole. And so that to me was something I did not really realize until I began researching for these particular books, the foundations of, or really the preambles of all the states.
So. That really is encouraging, isn't it? I'm so glad you put that in the book so that it's documented for the Masterbooks family, the true history of the United States, the true godly history of the United States that a lot of times we see people trying to eliminate as if it never happened.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it definitely, you can see, our friends that are listening, you can see and hear that this truly is a biblical worldview course, that each one that Craig has put together brings together the beauty of God's creation, the beauty of God's people, the uniqueness of God's people, and just gives the opportunity to explore and foster the wonder of God and just see beyond the lives that we live on our own, just to see a bigger picture of God's love for people. And I'm so glad you chose to write about that. It's not a subject that I ever really got into, but because your books are so colorful, like it really appeals to me because I don't want a long lecture about, even as an adult, about geography or social studies, but nuggets, I can do the nuggets.
Well, I kind of prefer that too. I mean, I love words, I love reading, but if a book doesn't have pictures, it can lose me pretty fast.
Yeah,
It's really good.
your
Um,
books have
anyway,
gorgeous pictures.
they
So now we come to one of my favorite segments. This is Off the Shelf and Into Your Heart, where we ask our guests which one of Master Books books they love the most. And Craig is going to share his with us.
so it might be a little strange, maybe. Hopefully not. It's a good book. So I worked on this one actually with one of our just amazing designers, and I loved it. I love bugs. Don't get me wrong, I still love bugs even today. But as a kid, that was just a fascination for me.
Okay.
So we came up with a kid's book. It's Bugs, Big and Small, and God Made Them All, I believe is what the finishing title is. And it's just a fascinating glimpse, massive bugs, obviously, that they have blown up. So you can zoom in and see the intricate detail that God used just in bugs. It fascinates me. But this was from someone at Answers in Genesis at the kind of insectorium, I think is what they call it.
Oh, okay.
They gave us a lot of pictures. They gave us the verbiage and things for this, and how God created these particular things basically to be a part of our world and whatnot. But it's just wonderful. And it was not selling, I think, because maybe not everybody is fascinated by bugs as much as I am. But they let me write the curriculum for it. So that was the elementary science, soil, sea, and sky, which has
Okay.
other books combined.
Yes.
So I was finally happy to see it was selling. People were buying it because they were
It's
buying
popular now.
books.
Yes.
But I was like, it's amazing what God does. And God does big things amazing. So you look at the stars,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fascinating, and the planets and all that. And then he does very small, intricate things, so detailed, little tiny hairs on these little tiny bugs. It just amazes me. I've just
Yes.
always been amazed, and it just amazed me more to be able to open that book to any page and see what God has done. It's just phenomenal.
I'm really glad that's your favorite and that you brought it up today, because a lot of people might not know about it, and you're not the only person who loves bugs as a kid. Not that adults don't too, but there is such a fascination. I thought my nephew was going to become what do you call it, an etymologist. He could
Oh,
tell
wow.
you everything about a bug so young. He had read all the books. So it is a beautiful book and we highly recommend it. So now to our very last little section of the podcast, where we get to ask you, Craig, the homeschool father of two, what you wish someone had told you now that you know it, but you wish you would have known way earlier in your career as a homeschool father. What piece of advice do you want to share?
Oh, goodness gracious. Um, I I would say really, really just enjoy these times that you have. I think sometimes we get so stressed, we're so worried that, and this was us starting out for sure, that how are we going to teach our kids, even when they're little, you're teaching them to read and to write and all these things that you always have trusted, the school system to be able to do. And so you kind of get scared, a little bit nervous. Just trust God, know his peace, and know that you don't have to feel so much stress and pressure. Just enjoy this time. Make it something enjoyable, because all of us, but kids for sure, tend to remember things that you have an emotional connection to. So if you are enjoying these times, they're more likely to remember how wonderful it was, growing up.
Mhm.
And my kids can still remember certain things we did, whether it was a field trip or something like that we did, or a particular study. They both loved living fossils. That was one of the ones that they both did, and that was one of their favorite courses to do.
Mhm.
And so, um, just really enjoy it. Let God's peace just really fill your home, and don't let anything try and distract you and make you feel stressed that you can't do this, because you can. And or sometimes this is what I tell my kids: say I can't do this, but through God I can, because then your stress and pressure isn't on yourself to
Right.
do it. You're trusting in God, who is much greater, to be
Mhm.
able to do it through you, and to feel that peace that what you're doing is right, and what you're doing is good, and what you're doing is going to raise your children up in the fear and the knowledge and the love of God. And so you're doing something that's just so beyond wonderful. But enjoy those times. They grow up. Let me tell you, they they grow up, and so you want to enjoy when they're little, and you can kind of share with them. And as they grow older too, we're so close to both our kids, because we were not only their parents, we were their teachers. We were the ones that went with them on every field trip, and
Right.
that has built between us just an incredible connection that you know, I love my mom and dad. They're both passed away now, but I would have to say I didn't necessarily have that kind of connection with them, because I couldn't. They were at work, or I was
Mhm.
at school, or so this when you homeschool, when they're with you all the time like that, it should, enjoy that time. Enjoy that time that you have. It's a very special, blessed time.
I think that's a really wise piece of advice, and how wonderful to teach your children to express their weakness, and then in faith express their faith in God that He will strengthen them. I think just that mustard seed of faith, and saying, I'm weak, but you are strong, and
Yes.
I'm going to depend
Yeah.
on you, teaching your children to do it, but also doing that yourself as the leader and the
I
orchestrator of the
need to do that a
homeschool.
lot. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Craig, thank you so much for spending time with us today, telling us about your different curriculum. You can, those of you who are listening, go to masterbooks.com. You can type in Craig's name, Craig Froman, or look up the elementary uh, geography, social studies, do any kind of geography search, and you will probably find Craig's curriculum. Thank you all for listening and being a part of the Master Books family. I want to bless you in the name of Jesus and your family with a love of God that reaches far beyond the borders of your home and your community into the greater world. And I pray that the Lord would give each one of you an overflowing love with your neighbor on a global scale. And it's with that we will say goodbye. Hey, thanks for joining the Master Books podcast. This was fun, and we are really glad you were with us. We invite you to check out masterbooks.com. We have a big library of books that will feed the faith of your family. And hey, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss an episode. We'll see you next time.